Donald Trump is making the radio rounds. I believe this is a radio show. It's called Walla, or he's with Walla News correspondent Barak Ravid on the Unholy podcast. Sorry, not a radio show. Here he is talking about American Jews and their opinion of Israel. This ought to be not offensive at all.
There's people in this country that are Jewish no longer love Israel. I'll tell you, the evangelical Christians love Israel more than the Jews in this country. It used to be that Israel had absolute power over Congress, and today I think it's the exact opposite. And I think Obama and Biden did that. And yet in the election, they still get a lot of votes from Jewish people, which tells you that the Jewish people, and I've said this for a long time, the Jewish people in the United States either don't like Israel or don't care about Israel. I mean, you look at the New York Times hates Israel, hates them. And they're Jewish people that run the New York Times. I mean, the Sulzberger family.
So Donald Trump can basically say, and he just did there, that Israel used to completely control Congress. I'm not seeing the right wing go up in arms after Ilhan Omar said something in a way less offensive context, and the fact that the Israel lobby has a significant influence over Congress, like she pointed that out as a negative. I guess Donald Trump was pointing it out in a nostalgic way. It used to be great in those times when Israel controlled Congress, and now you don't know, the American Jews, they don't love Israel anymore.
Yeah, now 22% of respondents believe Israel has committed genocide, and 67% say denying Jewish states' rights to exist as anti-Semitic. So, yeah, like there is like I think like the thing is like he says things. I mean, the stuff, it does sound like he's just an anti-Semite when he's like, New York Times, the Jews that run that aren't supporting us. It's like that. Okay, come on, Trump. And this is like Sam would point out, like when Ben Shapiro says his a Jew in name only rants, right? Like this has been here for a while, I guess, is what I'm thinking. Like on the right, and Trump is just, again, willing to verbalize it.
Right. And I just want to point out that if you're like maybe center left and we're talking about Israel, and you also like participate in or give credence to the conversation that criticism of Israel means you are anti-Semitic, you are feeding into the idea that like Judaism in and of itself and Jewish people are inextricably linked to Israel, which is not the case.
Right.
So making that connection or continuing that connection, I mean, one, it's obviously designed to undercut a movement that's trying to end apartheid and a cultural genocide in Palestine. But two, you are basically just contributing to the anti-Semitic rants of right-wingers like Donald Trump, who, now, the evangelicals, they're the ones that really support Israel. Why do the evangelicals want a strong Israeli state? Does he know this? Do people understand this? They want all the Jews to return to Israel so that there can be an apocalypse, essentially, where they all die. It's pretty...
We'll do apocalypse, but for Trump. Can we do it, Trump?
And then the true evangelical, real people are the ones that emerge in the end. That's what they want.
Yeah. This is from the Times of Israel. Among younger voters included in the survey released Tuesday, agreement with the statement. The poll found that 9% of voters agree with the statement, Israel doesn't have a right to exist. Only, 1 in 10. But among voters under 40, that proportion was 20%. A third of younger voters agreed that Israel is committing genocide, a position that even human rights lawyers who are critical of Israel say extreme.
That's
a little bit of editorial there from the Times of Israel.
Thank you, Times of Israel.
And then more than a third agreed that Israel is an apartheid state, which as far as I'm concerned is simply a statement of fact.
It is. I mean, it's also in like it's in keeping with what the United Nations categorizes as the situation there in Israel. But I'm sure Trump would say that's controlled by the Jews too. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Every institution, the globalists, you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying.
But yeah, it's like not because they're losing loyalty to, well, I mean,
and the idea that there's loyalty.
yeah, it's such a weird construction, right? Like they're gaining knowledge about this political project in the Middle East that is supposed to be done in their name, and actually has turned out to be a bit of a horror show.
Yeah, but like also look at the conservative frame of mind with loyalty. Like they are so tribalist that someone like Trump cannot understand the concept of like being a global citizen. And Jewish people in this country, as you point out in terms of like the polling, they tend to be more liberal and thus less tribalist. So people who are on the left have a larger understanding about like human rights in general, as opposed to just my group good, your group bad. That's kind of what, I mean, that's it. So also slurring his words a bit, maybe forgot to take his Adderall that morning. Unclear what's going on there. Did you hear that?
Yeah, no, he's going to look great in 2024.
Milton Apathy said, didn't you say that about Biden? Last I checked, he won about losing to anybody. Yeah, he lost. He won because of a global pandemic. That
I can just say for my part and Michael's, like, we were not saying that.
That's true.
We said he was formidable, and that, yeah, like I mean I definitely said like what, like, because this came about when the Bernie or bust conversation again happened, and it's like, well, we can do that, but what happens if we do that and he wins, right? And it's like I think like there's still a conversation to be had, but I definitely know that I was not saying Joe Biden.
You were
was gonna
not,
lose to
and
everyone.
Mike. I mean, I remember specifically my conversation with Michael on TMBS about it.
And that's actually a lesson we should take. Like, the Democrats might be able to still win elections, even letting Democrat or Republicans attack voting rights and not doing anything, because they might have enough suburban people. Like, the thing is like, it's
not sustainable, but it's like, and it's not
in the short term,
we need
it
to
might
build. Yeah,
in the short term, it might continue to happen. And like, I'm not saying what we should do regarding that, but it's just like everyone just assumes because they do the bad thing that the right is going to win, or the Republicans, and it's like they did the bad thing with picking Joe Biden and axing Bernie, and they ended up turning out more voters than have ever voted in a general election before.
Yeah. I mean, I like, it's easy. I was wrong about Biden, I think. It's pretty obvious. I think the circumstances definitely change. I think maybe the context of that conversation with Michael was the primary, though, not versus Trump.
Yeah, well, even like after,
but you guys had that. I mean, you guys talked about it separately.
Yeah, but also, I mean, it's also the case that Biden could have lost to Trump had not there been a pandemic.
That's my position. That's my belief.
I think that's conceivable entirely.
But I think I definitely underestimated him in the primary. And living and learning. Look, we make jokes about me being young, but I am young, and I know I don't know everything. Well, so I'm still trying to learn.
Those sorts of that sort of prognostication, I don't think is really what some people think that's the job. Is like who can do the best predictions, and I'm more agnostic about predictions. I think it's that's it's basically astrology. Like, who knows what's going to happen.
Milton Apathy writes in, hey, Emma and Matt, what are your thoughts on Stacey Abrams? I seem to remember you both throwing hate mail her way, too. This is the same I am. What's up with that? When did I throw hate mail towards Stacey Abrams? Like, I think she's a pretty standard Democrat, and we praised her organization effort in Georgia, like, a lot.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of her politics, and I think the Bloomberg stuff was. I think, like, I will not apologize for drawing a bright red line about not collaborating with Michael Bloomberg in terms of Democratic politics. I think he's an absolute menace. So and otherwise, like, I think, yeah, she's shown some capability to organize folks. I think that's great. And I think, now
people are writing in, Matt was literally more focused on Warren than Biden. Come on, man. You can't do two things at once.
No, we weren't more focused on. We focused on Warren a lot, but we always said, I go back and look at those. We always said Biden was the real obstacle. Like
I don't
remember
think
the
that's a
whole thing.
correct characterization of their position, even
We
though
did
that was
PMC
before
stuff.
my time.
We did
but-
PMC stuff, but yeah, like that's wrong. It's just wrong.
Yeah. Mark Monkey, in my experience, white supremacists support Israel because they want it to be an ethno-state. What they don't like is our funding of them and the belief that they control everything. In other words, Trump's words are consistent. Also, Trump's basically saying that they have a dual loyalty falling on deaf ears is always telling.